Welcome to Global Dialogue Plus, a new program from the Tennessee World Affairs Council. I'm Patrick Ryan. We will be bringing you brief conversations with specialists, decision makers, and thought leaders on international issues. You'll find all of these on our website at tnwac.org or on our youtube.com TNWAC video channel and podcasts wherever you can look for Global Tennessee. Today, we welcome Lisset Diaz, lead singer of the band, the Sweet Lizzy Project. Lisset, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We first talked with Lisset in December 2018. It seems like the dawn of time, Lisset, after the year we've had. But we talked about the Sweet Lizzy Project, your band that was organized in Havanna, Cuba. Through discovery in the PBS documentary, Havanna Time Machine, they migrated to Nashville, Tennessee to begin their musical journey. You can look in our program details for more on that story and links to their great music. But we're here today to talk with Lisset about Cuba. She's passionate about the situation for her family, friends, and countrymen in the wake of protests that erupted there last month. The nationwide unrest that erupted was a consequence of Cuba's economic and social crises, and it challenged the ruling Communist Party and the regime of President Miguel Diaz-Canel. Can you set the scene for us? Just a little background on what's been happening in Cuba in the last couple of years that have led to the conditions that caused the protests that we saw last month.
Well, first of all, it's been 62 years of dictatorship. And I have not said this out loud many times. I never used this term before for many reasons. The first one is I didn't know that we had a dictatorship. When you're born and raised in Cuba and you have, very limited access to information, you don't have any internet, you don't have any independent media, so it's the only information you get is from the official press, the government, and so what they want you to know, which means that you basically don't know what's happening out there in the real world. So that was one reason I never called it dictatorship. And more recently, because I was afraid, because I still have friends and family there, because I know that the more I say about this topic and about the Cuban regime, they're not going to let me go back in. And if they do, I could go to jail, which is what happens with, what happens to a lot of other artists. Like, you don't have to be violent to go through the repression and all the things that the Cuban regime does to whoever speak up. So that's been happening for 62 years, which is a really, really long time. But more recently, I think that what changed is, well, basically that now Cuban people have access to information because they have more internet now. When I left Cuba 3 years ago, it was still very, very hard to, connect to the internet. The access was not as like it is right now. So people know what's happening in the world, and most importantly, I think Cubans can connect between them. The protests this July 11th started in a place called San Antonio de los Baños, which is a place in the west part of the country. And thanks to Facebook Live, basically, because of course the Cuban, the official TV, the Cuban television wouldn't talk about it when it was happening. But thanks to internet, like it spread it all over the country, and the feeling was mutual. So that's why all the Cubans went out on the streets and they protest. Now, that's definitely part of the the reason why this is happening right now, the access to internet and information. On the other half, the situation in Cuba in the last 2 years has been, getting a lot worse because of the pandemic. Right now, it's really, really bad. A lot of people are dying every day. There's no food, no medicine. It's been a crisis, also because for Cuba, tourism is very important, and because of the pandemic, that had to stop. Also, during the Trump administration, there were a lot more restrictions, and that directly affected the situation in Cuba. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that's the main problem. The main problem is the fact that the government in Cuba is just not. It's not good for its people, and it has not been good for a really long time, 62 years to be exact. But definitely the restrictions and the pandemic and all this circumstantial events have helped Cuban people to realize that they have to speak up and do something. And honestly,
it's been a convergence of the economic conditions made worse by the pandemic, and the people feel that they are now connected enough that they can all voice their opposition to what's happening together.
Yes,
but the government has come down very hard on them.
Yes, I think they feel somehow that whatever happens to them, it won't be silent. Like they can they can let the world know what's happening in Cuba because of their phones and internet. However, the government reacted, and I mean, some people say, why is that a surprise for you? I'm like, yeah, it was a surprise for me. I know what they do, but I was not expecting the president to go on live television and just say, basically call for a civil war, like tell to the revolucionarios, which are the Cuban people, that they assume that support the revolution, to go out on the streets and just fight their brothers and sisters. That's exactly what happened. And that was only their excuse to put the police out there, the army out there with weapons. It's important to say that the Cuban people don't have weapons, and
Right.
and you could see it on the videos. Like sometimes they were not even wearing shoes, and then they have the police out there with their uniforms and guns, and it was very violent, and it was very sad to watch.
Lisset, do you think that the protests have been put down? Is there still likelihood there'll be more unrest? The government seems to have been very effective in militarizing the streets, reducing the ability for people to communicate, and in many cases have mass arrested protesters and are already starting trials.
Yes, that we still don't know the exact amount of people who are missing or pending trials, or just people who just disappeared and they're not even waiting for fair trial, or we just don't know. And of course everybody's really, really worried about it. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't think people are gonna forget what the government did, and definitely we are not gonna forget that feeling of freedom that we all, even Cubans here, like we that are not in Cuba, that we're not there on the streets screaming or doing whatever they were doing. We felt free for the first time, because it's like it's all these things that you've been swallowing for years, and now all of a sudden you're just saying it out loud. They were screaming freedom, and that's a lot to say. That's all to say after 62 years. We are not. I've been here in the States for 3 years, for almost 4. and I've seen protests a lot. So it's something that people do. But for Cubans, I had never seen anything like that. My grandmother lived during the revolution, when the Cuban Revolution happened, and it was not like this either.
Well, we certainly are watching the situation there with great interest. Now, the U.S. government is in an odd position because there's not really much it can do directly to aid the protesters, because in some cases the government is blaming outside sources like the U.S. for fomenting the unrest. But the Biden administration has done some things like talked about allowing direct remittances, money being sent directly to people, and making it easier for visas to be applied for in Havanna. What do you think about the reaction of the U.S. government so far? Is there something more that could be done, or is it on the sidelines?
I don't know. They have, they've paid attention to the situation, and a lot has been said. I'm not sure how those steps that the president wants to take in the future are going to help, because the situation is kind of complicated. At the same time, I think that Cubans by themselves need to figure it out. I know it's hard. I know there's a lot that is going to take from all of us to make that happen. But I think that's something we need to do by ourselves somehow. Lots of Cubans are asking for military intervention, things like that, and I think we need to keep fighting for unity among us, among Cubans, because there's a lot of people who still support the Cuban Revolution, and they just, these are our first steps to democracy, I think, and we cannot rush it. We need to feel it, and we need to fight for it. So I think that I appreciate that, of course, that the U.S. government is trying to help, and whatever help, Cuba needs help. That hashtag SOS Cuba is out there because spreading awareness is the most important thing right now, because Cuba's been in the dark for so long and isolated for so long, and the international opinion sometimes, is not clear about the real situation. They support the government because they just don't know what's happening to
Right.
the Cuban people. So they need to know the truth, and they need to know what's happening.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to help us understand the situation, and we'll talk some more about the situation in Cuba. And I'm sure that many of us will be watching what happens there, and wishing that, as you say, this is the first step in the path to democracy. Lisset Diaz, congratulations again on the success of your band, Sweet Lizzy Project. We look forward to seeing you more around Nashville and hearing about your adventures on the road. Best of luck with the band. But of course, we are all concerned about the future of what's happening with your countrymen in your homeland of Cuba. Lisset Diaz, thank you so much for being with us today. And
thank you for having me, and thank you for helping me, spread the message.
Terrific. Thanks. So this is our inaugural edition of Global Dialogue Plus. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will be back with more. Again, you can find this and other programs on TNWAC.org and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TNWAC. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.